this is the Educational Leadership Program through the College of Education at Wayne State University. Next slide. And my name is Carla Harting. I am the program coordinator for the Educational Leadership and Policy Studies program. And on the screen is my email address and my phone number. I'm also going to provide another phone number while we're still with the pandemic. You can reach me at 248-573-7380. But like I said, you're going to get a copy of this PowerPoint and also the video. Next slide. So through our program, your career options can be anything from being a superintendent, a principal, an assistant superintendent. You could become a supervisor of special education, director of special education. We have doctorate programs where there are higher education positions that are available also. Next screen. So the ones we're going to talk about first are the Masters of Education and the Education Specialist. And both of these programs are for you to improve your skills as a leader and to prepare you for an administrative position in schools and within the community. Also, as you get farther into the program, it is for practicing administrators, if you're already administrators, and you want to enhance your skills. Next slide. So when you go through either the Masters or the Ed Specialist, at the end of the program, you will, depending on what program you pick, you can get your Michigan School Administrator Certificate, either elementary and secondary administrator K-12, or as a central office administrator. And you apply for those certificates through MOACs. So if you're currently a teacher, you have a MOACs account where you record your professional development. That's where you apply also for your administrator certification. If you're looking to become a special education administrator, either a supervisor or director, right now it is up to the district to apply for those approvals. So once you complete the coursework, you go to your district and say, I've completed the coursework, please apply for either supervisor or director, depending on where you're at in your program. Next slide. So to apply for the master's programs, the admissions requirements are a 2.75 in your undergraduate GPA for regular admission. If you have a 2.5 up to a 2.75, you would get qualified admission. And if you receive qualified admission, it means that you must have in your first semester a 3.0 GPA. When you do the application, you need to upload your transcripts. And when you're first doing your application, unofficial transcripts are fine. But once you're admitted, during the first semester that you're taking coursework, you need to get a certificate, an official certificate from the university or college you attended. The other thing that's required for both the master's and the Ed Specialist is a personal statement. And it is just a couple of paragraphs telling why you want to be an administrator in the future, why you want to be in the leadership program. Next slide. The master's program is a 30 credit hour program, and usually courses are available as traditional, hybrid, and online. Currently, due to the pandemic, everything is online, and we anticipate that going through fall. No matter what, all of our coursework is available online. And as I said, once you're through the program, you are able to apply for administrative certification. Next slide. Here's a list of the courses that are involved. And I'm not going to read them all off. As I said, you're going to get a copy of this so you can see what the courses are. There are leadership courses, there's finance courses, law. You also do an internship. And the internship is the thing that isn't online. You need to do an internship within a district. And usually you would do it at the school you're at. But sometimes people don't want to do that. But you need to look around, find where you want to do your internship. And I usually recommend you do an internship in the school that you would like to be an administrator, or the district in which you want to be an administrator, because this gives you an opportunity to showcase your skills. Next slide. So the education specialist is a little different. There are 3 options for the ed specialist. You can either work on the elementary and secondary administrator, K-12, special education administrator, central office administrator, and they are all 30 credit hours programs. The thing about this is, in order to be an administrator in the state of Michigan, you have to have a master's. So if you're beginning work, you've got your undergraduate degree and you're going for your master's, you have to complete all 30 credit hours and receive your master's before you can apply for the administrative certification. If you're doing an ed specialist, you've already met the requirement of the master's. You have to have a master's to get into the ed specialist program. Once you complete 23 hours, you are able to apply for your administrator certification. And I'll show you which 23 hours it is. For special education administrators, it is 30 credit hours. And for central office administrator, it's 21 credit hours before you can apply for certification. Next slide. So it's a 30 credit hour program. They also are traditional hybrid and online courses. Right now, through fall, they're all online. And as I said, for the K-12 administrator certification, once you complete a specific courses, 23 credit hours, you can apply for your certification. Next slide. So to get into the ed specialist program, a 3.4 GPA for regular admission and a 2.75 undergraduate GPA. You need to, when you're applying, you need to upload transcripts. As I said before, unofficial is fine when you're applying. Just once you've been admitted, you will need to get official transcripts. You need to do the personal statement again, a couple paragraphs on why you want to be in the program. And as I said, you need a master's degree to apply for the ed specialist program. Next slide. So one of the programs, the special education administrator, there are a couple of additional things you need to apply for the program. You have to have certification in an area of special education. You can be a certified special ed teacher. You could be a social worker, school psychologist, speech and language, occupational therapist, physical therapist. But you also have to show that you've had a minimum of 3 years of experience in special education. So you need to be certified in an area of special ed and have worked in special education in that area for a minimum of 3 years. Next slide. For the K-12, elementary and secondary, as I said, the top courses total 23 hours, and those are the courses you need for certification. To get your educational specialist certificate, you need to do an additional 2 courses, supervision of instruction and field studies, but they're not required for certification. They're just required to get your education specialist. Next slide. For the special education administrator, 30 credit hours are required, and all of these courses are required. Just as with the internship in general education, in special education, you do an internship, it's called a practicum. And that is, and I think I forgot to say, the internship is 216 hours in a position. The practicum is 200 hours. These are both state requirements. Wayne State didn't make up these hours. I know it seems strange. For general ed, it's 216. For special ed, it's 200. But the practicum needs to be done under a special education director. And that can be done in the district in which you work. Next slide. For central office administrator, and here we're talking about people who are usually interested in becoming superintendents, assistant superintendents, human resources, curriculum director. And for the ed specialist, it's 30 credit hours, but to apply to the state of Michigan through MOACs, it's 21 credit hours. It's those top courses that are required. So you also get some electives, which this is the only program in which you get to pick electives. All the other programs are definitely, these are the courses you have to take. Next slide. If you already have a master's degree and you're just interested in certification as a K-12 administrator or as a supervisor of special education, you can do a non-degree administrative certificate. And you can apply, and I can send you an application information on that. What's required is you have to have your transcripts, you submit your transcripts, you have to have at least a master's. There's no application fee, but the thing about non-degree is there's no financial aid or scholarships available. But some people just want their administrative certification. So for elementary and secondary, if you already have a master's degree, you would take the 23 hours. For elementary and secondary, you would take 18 hours for supervisor of special education or 21 hours for central office certification. Next slide. So the non-degree, it's right here. These are the classes you would have to take the 23 credit hours. Next slide. And now I'm just going to go over the doctoral programs that we offer. We offer both a Doctor of Education with 2 cohorts, one that focuses on K-12 and the other that focuses on higher education. We also offer a Doctor of Philosophy. Next slide. So people always ask us, what is the difference between an EDD and a PhD? The EDD is a Doctor of Education. The PhD is philosophy. So an EDD, it's what you want to do with a degree once you have it. So people who do the EDD usually are planning to remain in K-12 as a superintendent, assistant superintendent, curriculum director, or other administrative leadership position, usually at central office. For the PhD, you're looking more at scholarly practice, that what you really want to do is do research. You want to teach full-time at a university. You want to publish what you do your research on. So it's more theoretical as opposed to practical. And so our goal is that we want to, with a doctorate of education, we want to prepare professional leaders, and we want to prepare researchers for the Doctor of Philosophy. And you can see the knowledge base. So you'll be looking at applying your knowledge for practical applications in the EDD, and you will be working on theoretical and conceptual knowledge if you're working on the PhD. Next slide. So the Doctor of Education, we just talked about you're a practitioner. So the type of research you would be doing is usually looking at a school or a district setting, and there's a problem of practice, and you want to investigate it to see what is the reason behind that problem of practice and what recommendations might you be able to make to assist with alleviating that problem of practice. In the area of higher education, we're looking at leadership as either an assistant dean, working as an academic advisor, and working in higher education in leadership and policymaking roles in higher education. Next slide. The Doctor of Education is done in a cohort model. It is a group of students who work together. For the higher ed, it's usually 6 to 9 students. We've done a few more in the K-12 cohort, usually 10 to 12 students at a time. But you take the same coursework together. It's over 4 semesters. So you get to know that group of people. It's been really successful, people working together and encouraging people on. Sometimes you get frustrated and you need that support from the other people you're going through the program with. And this has an opportunity to build relationships, and you also develop a network of practitioners that you can work with. Next slide. So to apply for the Doctorate of Education, you need at least a 3.0 GPA, and for this, a 3.0 undergraduate GPA. So a 3.4 graduate GPA and a 3.0 undergraduate. Same things with the transcripts. Unofficial are fine when you apply. You'll have to get official once admitted. You must have a minimum of a master's degree from an accredited graduate school with no grade lower than a B. And it does get, we do have a lot of people who apply to this program. For this one, you'll write an autobiographical statement that will include your career goals and your research interests. And what they're looking for when they're reviewing these applications, they don't want to just hear, well, I want to get the doctorate because I want that doctorate in front of my name. And I've had people tell me that. That's the reason they want it. I just want to be a doctor. We really look for people, what do you want to do with the information you're going to receive in this degree, and how are you going to use it in the future? So that's really important. You will also be asked for 3 letters of recommendation, 2 professional, 1 academic, and an interview may or may not be required. If you've been through our program, sometimes the faculty already know the person and have recommended them for the program. But if you're from the outside or you haven't taken one of our programs, we may ask you to do an interview. Next slide. So for the doctorate, it's a 75-hour credit requirement. We accept 30 hours of graduate credit prior to admission as a doctorate applicant. You can transfer in 30 credit hours. Then you will need to take 25 semester hours of coursework, and that includes 15 hours in advanced educational leadership courses, and then 10 hours of research techniques. You will then be required to write a dissertation, and that's 20 credit hours. So you can bring in 30 credit hours. You will take 25 hours of coursework and a dissertation of 20 hours. So it's 45 hours is what it is. And you must complete it within 7 years. Next slide. Here are the courses that are required. It's another one where it's pretty much laid out what coursework you have to take. If you've already taken one of these courses, which may have happened in another program, then we would see about giving you a different course. This is the one for Doctor of Education K-12. Next slide. And these are the courses for the higher education plan of work. What we do is we admit students to the Doctor of Education program. We have a K-12 cohort that started this fall, the past fall in 2020. In fall of 2021, there will be a higher education cohort starting. The next K-12 cohorts will start in fall of 2022. So what we do is we alternate years, especially because once you begin your coursework, you'll be working with an advisor, and there's quite a bit of work to do with your advisor. So that's why we offer them every other year. Next slide. Our other doctorate program is a Doctor of Philosophy in Educational Leadership and Policy Studies. And as we said, this is for somebody who's looking to work full-time in academia you're interested in theory and conceptual analysis, and you're interested in research in theory and practice for advancing education. Next slide. Doctor of Philosophy admissions requirement are much like what it's required for the Doctor of Education, but in this case, we need 2 academic references and 1 professional. And the autobiographical statement is really important, as I said before. That's going to be your writing statement. We don't require that you take a test to get into our program. So instead, we look at the autobiographical statement for our doctorate programs as your writing sample. And we really look at that because part of this program is you are going to be doing a lot of reading and a lot of writing. And writing skills are really important to this program. Next slide. The Doctor of Philosophy requires a minimum of 90 credit hours. You can transfer in 30 credit hours. Your area of concentration will be 15 hours in educational leadership coursework and research techniques. And this, I'm sorry, this slide is old. It is 15 hours of research, and I'll correct that before I send it out. So there is 15 hours of coursework in educational leadership courses and 15 hours of research. The dissertation requires 30 credit hours. So this is 60 credit hours that you will be required to take for the Doctor of Philosophy. Next screen. The application process, you would go to this link. I also have specific application directions for each of the programs we've talked about. So once I know what program you're interested in, I will be glad to send the specific information out on how to apply. If you would like to put in the chat what program you're interested in, or you can stay on and I'll check with each of you so I make sure that I send the correct information out to you on the program you might be interested in applying for. Next slide. So the admission deadlines for the Masters and Ed Specialist programs are 2 weeks before the start of the semester. So you still have time if you're interested in starting in spring summer, which starts May 1st, you still have time to apply for that program, and definitely you have time to apply for fall. The EDD for the higher ed cohort, March 15th, which is coming up really quickly, is when those applications are due. And for the K-12 cohort, January 10th of 2022. And I know that sounds like that's a long way away, but people can begin applying, I think, within September. You can apply for the 2022. And I'm going to answer questions at the end. I see somebody has a question. I'll be glad to answer that. We're almost done. Next slide. If you want information on tuition and fees, go to this link. And like I said, I'm going to send this information out. Next slide. If financial aid, there's information here. We have a specific person you can contact if you have questions, Christine Powell. Her email address is here. Financial aid forms are at this link. And the FAFSA federal school code is listed there. And if you're looking for financial aid, you know you're going to have to fill out that FAFSA form. Okay, next slide. This is where you go for scholarship information and financial aid. Scholarships, the time to apply for scholarships is from October to March 1st. So for this next school year, for 21-22, the scholarships from the College of Ed have already been applied for, and people will be notified in May. There sometimes are additional scholarships that come up even for that school year. So going to that website is always good. But right now the scholarships ended March 1st, the application process, and those will be given out shortly. This is where you can go for financial aid information. Next slide. This is my information. Once again, you can also contact College of Ed Academic Services. They have a drop-in Zoom service right now that you'll be able to talk to them about any information you want from them. But if you email me or call me, I will be glad to talk to you about the programs. Email probably is best because I'm going to end up sending you back forms and information. Next slide. These are the faculty, the full-time faculty that are in our program. Myself, Dr. Bill Hill is our assistant dean, and the other four, Erica Edwards, Sarah Lenoff, Ben Pogozinski, Carolyn Shields, are all full-time faculty members. The next slide. These are our part-time faculty, and if you're in the Masters in Ed Specialists, these are usually the people you are going to work with. These are people who are current superintendents, special ed directors. All of them have been administrators. So you are going to be working with people who are in the field, working in the positions you might be interested in. We also have a human resources director. So they are knowledgeable people who can really help you move forward in your program. Thank you so much for coming, and I'll be in touch, and feel free to contact me with any questions you have.